Why are we so enthralled with the chance to win free money without a lot of work? I would say, the overarching reason that people pay the lottery is that the lottery is really designed to take advantage of the biases and heuristics that we have in our judgment and our decision-making. We're just not wired to deal with probabilities as small as 1 in almost 300 million to win the jackpot in Powerball, for example. And what it does is it takes advantage of something called the availability heuristic, which is where we judge the probability that something's going to happen by how easy it is to come up with examples of that happening. But one man decided he would turn the chances of winning in his favor. It was the biggest lottery scam in American history. The video was grainy, but it showed enough to possibly crack open the biggest lottery scam in American history. A heavyset man walks into a quick-trip convenience store just off Interstate 80 in Des Moines, Iowa, 2 days before Christmas 2010. The hood of his sweatshirt is pulled over his head, obscuring his face. He grabs a fountain drink and 2 hot dogs. "Hello," the cashier says brightly. Head down, the man replies in a low-pitched drawl, "Hello." They exchange a few more words. The man pulls 2 pieces of paper from his pocket. The cashier runs them through the lottery terminal and then hands over some change. Once outside, the man pulls off his hood, gets into his SUV, and drives away. The pieces of paper were play slips for Hot Lotto, a lottery game that was available in 14 states and Washington, D.C. Players who got all 6 numbers right won a jackpot that varied according to how many tickets were sold. At the time of the video, the jackpot was approaching $10 million. 6 days later, on December 29th, the Hot Lotto numbers were selected: 3, 12, 16, 26, 33, 11. The next day, the Iowa Lottery announced that a quick trip in Des Moines had sold the winning ticket. But no one came forward to claim the now $16.5 million jackpot. After a month passed, the Iowa Lottery held a news conference to note that the money was still uncollected. The lottery issued another public reminder 3 months after the winning numbers were announced, then another at 6 months and again at 9 months, each time warning that winners had 1 year to claim their money. In November 2011, a man named Philip Johnston, a Canadian attorney, called in with the correct serial number from the winning ticket. But when asked what he'd been wearing when he bought it, his description of a sports coat and gray flannel dress pants did not match the quick trip video. Then, in a subsequent call, the man admitted he had fibbed. He said he was helping a client claim the ticket so the client wouldn't be identified. This was against the Iowa lottery rules, which require identities of winners to be public. Lottery officials were suspicious. The winner's anonymity was worth $16.5 million. Mary Neubauer, the Iowa Lottery's vice president of external relations, said he was convinced that the jackpot would never be claimed. And it wasn't, until exactly a year after the drawing, less than 2 hours before the 4 p.m. deadline, when representatives from a Des Moines law firm showed up at lottery headquarters with the winning ticket. The firm was claiming the prize on behalf of a trust whose beneficiary was a corporation in Belize. Its president was Philip Johnston, the same man who said he'd worn a sports coat to buy the ticket. It just absolutely stank all over the place. So the lottery held on to the jackpot while the Attorney General's office opened an investigation, but it went nowhere. 2 years later, a district attorney named Rob Sand inherited the languishing lottery file. In college, Sand had studied computer coding before going to law school, where his specialty was white-collar crime. Still, this case stumped him. His best evidence was that grainy video of a man in a hoodie, so he decided to release the footage to the media, hoping it might spark leads, and it did. The first came from an employee of the Maine Lottery who recognized the distinct voice in the video as that of a man who had conducted a security audit in their offices. A web developer at the Iowa Lottery also recognized the voice. It belonged to a man she had worked alongside for years, Eddie Tipton. Eddie was the information security director for the Multi-State Lottery Association, based in Des Moines. Among the games the association ran, the Hot Lotto. Eddie cut a big figure around the lottery office. He wrote software, handled network firewalls, and reviewed security for games in nearly 3 dozen states. His life revolved around his job. He sometimes stayed at his desk until 11 p.m. The prosecution knew Eddie had bought the winning ticket. The video made that pretty clear. So did cell phone records, which showed Eddie was in town that day, not out of town for the holidays as he had claimed. Investigators believed he'd fixed the lottery. But if the numbers are supposed to be generated randomly, how did he do it? Based on his research, Sand theorized that before the hot lotto jackpot, Eddie had managed to gain access to one of the two computers that select the winning numbers and inserted a thumb drive containing a string of coded instructions he'd written. The clandestine software, called a rootkit, allowed Eddie to restrict the pool of numbers that could hit, and then it deleted itself. The prosecutor told the jury members that they didn't have to understand the exact technology to convict Eddie. They just had to realize the near-impossible coincidence of the lottery security chiefs buying the winning ticket. After deliberating for only 5 hours, the jury found Eddie guilty. He appealed. Then the case took a very strange turn. One morning, a few months after the original trial, Sand's office phone rang. The call came from area code 281 in Texas, where Eddie grew up. The caller said he'd seen an article in the newspaper about Eddie's conviction. "Did y'all know," the tipster asked, "that Eddie's brother Tommy Tipton won the lottery, maybe about 10 years back?" Now Sand suspected that there were even more illicitly claimed tickets out there. He knew from experience that white-collar criminals aren't usually caught on their first attempt. In fact, a $783,257.72 jackpot from a Wisconsin lottery drawing on December 29, 2007, had been claimed by a Texas man named Robert Rhodes, Eddie Tipton's best friend. Fortunately, the computers used in the 2007 Wisconsin lottery jackpot were sitting in storage. A computer expert, Sean McClendon, unearthed some malicious computer code. It hadn't been hidden. You just needed to know what to look for. This, says Wisconsin Assistant Attorney General David Mass, was finding the smoking gun. Eddie Tipton pleaded guilty, as did his brother Tommy. Now facing 10 years in prison, Eddie agreed to spill his secrets, which lottery officials hoped would help them safeguard the games in the future. He explained that the whole scheme had started fairly innocently one day when he walked past one of the accountants at the Multi-State Lottery Association. "Hey, did you put your secret numbers in there?" the accountant teased Eddie. "What do you mean?" "Well, you can set numbers on any given day since you wrote the software." "Just like a little seed that was planted," Eddie said. "And then during one slow period, I tried it. To ensure that the winning numbers were generated randomly, the computer took a reading from a Geiger counter that measured radiation in the surrounding air. The radiation reading was plugged into an algorithm to come up with the winning lottery numbers. Eddie's scheme was to limit the random selection process as much as possible.